Welcome back to the weekend. We have a lot more to cover on this huge news day, including the massive military parade set to roll down the streets of the nation's capital, and President Trump's alarming warning to anyone planning to test the event, and the rare sight of U.S. military forces deployed on U.S. soil as some 200 Marines arrive in Los Angeles amid protests against immigration raids. We'll get reaction from Democratic Congresswoman Judy Chu of California. But we begin with the two competing visions of America that will be on display over the course of the next few hours. Tonight, Washington, D.C. will host a military parade for the first time in more than 3 decades, when thousands of troops and dozens of tanks parade through downtown to celebrate the U.S. Army's 250th birthday, which just happens to also be President Trump's 79th birthday. Heavy security is up and around parts of the National Mall in anticipation of the large crowds of people expected to attend the $45 million parade. But in the hours before that, big crowds are expected to attend the more than 2,000 No Kings protests in cities big and small in opposition to President Trump's agenda. It comes on the heels of a week where Americans across the nation have already demonstrated against what's happening in their country, and as President Trump issued an ominous warning to those who may protest the parade tonight.
We're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protester who wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest. But, you know, this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force.
Joining us now, Helene Cooper, Pentagon correspondent for the New York Times and an MSNBC political contributor, and former Pennsylvania Congressman and former Marine, Conor Lamb. Congressman, Helene, thank you both very much for coming to the weekend. Congressman, I'm going to start with you by reading to you a story by Helene Cooper. This was in the New York Times on Tuesday. Military parade marches into political maelstrom as troops deploy to L.A. And Helene writes, it is a juxtaposition that has military officials and experts concerned. Several current and former Army officials said the military parade and other festivities on Saturday, which is also President Trump's 79th birthday, could make it appear as if the military is celebrating a crackdown on Americans. One Army official, speaking on the condition of anonymity to avoid alienating Mr. Trump, said she would be leaving town during the events. Congressman, as I noted, you are a veteran. Your reaction to what Helene wrote, but also to this split screen moment that America faces today.
It was great reporting. I was suspecting all throughout the buildup to this parade that, you know, military leadership has to be horrified by this. They would never ask for something like this. And in fact, in the last Trump administration, they actively opposed it. It's a waste of their time. But more than that, it's awful for the morale of the troops and the image of the military. You know, these guys have to go out in communities all over America, big cities and small towns every day, and recruit new people to join the military and get them ready. And they're people of all different backgrounds and political ideologies and races and people who were born in other countries and all that. And the idea of associating the Army with this one particular president who, you know, is just not all that devoted to our democracy is just horrible for everything else that they have to do. So, you know, I think the split screen is good in the sense that we're showing we still have a very healthy and vibrant political culture here, that Trump has not intimidated people into staying quiet, that they are going to exercise their rights. But he's making it dangerous for them to do so by sort of encouraging that the idea that protests are going to be met with force. It doesn't make any sense.
Helene, Elise here. You did a great interview, long form, on the New York Times daily podcast. And you talked about how there had been years of pushback against this idea of the military parade internally, and until it finally got greenlit this year. And what was the difference, and who actually said, let's go forward with this? The time is right, versus the first Trump administration, when this parade did not happen?
Well, hi, Elise. Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. It's, we all went through the sort of pushback in the first Trump administration, but as we all know and we've seen over the past, 5 months now, we now have a different Pentagon. This is a Pentagon now that has put, and by Pentagon, I mean the political leadership of the Pentagon, has put acquiescence and amplifying of everything that President Trump says at the foremost of its agenda. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has made it very clear that he's not going to follow the role of his predecessors. He's not going to, be a cautionary voice like Mark Esper was, or somebody who sort of stood between President Trump and the military, as Jim Mattis did. So he's been very clear that whatever Trump wants, Trump is going to get. The Army has been planning for their 250th birthday celebration, which is what today is supposed to be. It just happens to also fall on President Trump's 79th birthday. They've been planning for 2 years, they said, for this birthday celebration, which was going to be festivals, and there were going to be like performing bands on the mall and at different bases around the country. But suddenly, about a month after Trump's inauguration, Army officials tell me, and they won't say where it came from, the idea of a parade popped up and was immediately greenlit. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Jim Mattis said that he'd rather drink acid than have a military parade on the streets of Washington, D.C. in that first Trump administration. Congressman, one of the things that I think is really important for people to understand is that this is the reason that folks have an issue, and not just folks on this network, folks in the military, is because it's not happening in a silo, right? Because if there was just a military parade, you still have the folks that didn't want it, you still have the critics, but you also have it happening at a time in which the Marines are in Los Angeles. You have the president going above the governor of California and sending military troops on the streets. You have the president saying what we just showed him saying. So talk about all of these things happening at once and make very clear to people that this isn't, you can both support the military and the folks that are being forced to do this in March today and have issues with the way that it happened and what's happening around it.
I actually think the people that are marching today are supporting the military more than Donald Trump is. And the reason for that is the Marine Corps in particular, where I served, it's built on values in a culture that just has nothing to do with partisan politics. And it really has to be protected from partisan politics. You have to train up these 18 and 19-year-olds from all these different backgrounds to believe in things like courage and self-sacrifice and, willingly taking on the hard missions, not being paid a whole lot, values that are kind of countercultural and old.
Now, with everything we're watching, does it feel scarier?
Well, and this is a critical point, because having the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the right to petition government for redress of grievances, the right of the people to freely assemble, is the very opposite of having a king, because kings brook no dissent. They don't tolerate people's free speech. So that's why in the last several weeks we've seen some remarkable things happen. We saw a state judge arrested in Wisconsin. Our colleague, Senator Padilla, was thrown to the ground with his arms behind his back and handcuffed. My colleague, LaMonica MacGyver from New Jersey, just received a criminal indictment and faces 17 years in prison because she went to a scheduled appointment at an ICE facility and then was in that scrum of people around the mayor of Newark as they decided to manhandle him. They sent the Marines to California, and they illegally tried to federalize the National Guard in California. But the remarkable thing about our constitutional system is how resilient all the other parts of the government are. And I'm proud of the governor of California, the mayor of Los Angeles, the sheriff, and the chief of police there, who said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need your help. You're just going to make things worse. And so far, we're winning in court there. There are now 184 federal preliminary injunctions or temporary restraining orders against this reign of lawlessness across the country. And today we're going to see a magnificent manifestation of the freedom of speech and what it means to have that in our society.
Congressman, would pick up on something because as you were running through the litany of public officials, elected officials who have been retaliated against by this administration, you talked about the scheduled appointment, and that made me think of all the immigrants we have seen be detained, removed, deported from hearings, appointments to be a part of the legal process, following the rules that they were told to follow, and getting snatched up by the immigration services. And I'm going to put up this headline from military.com from yesterday. ICE arrests Louisiana mother of a 9-week-old wife of Marine at immigration hearing. And this case highlights how the Trump administration's immigration crackdown is increasingly being driven by arrests at immigration check-ins and court hearings. If people are showing up at court, if people are showing up at immigration check-ins, they are following the rules. They are following the laws as set forth by the American government.
Yeah. Well, and this is unfortunately a standard practice now. We've been seeing this happen all over the country. That was the same occasion upon which the judge in Wisconsin was arrested as well. To preview what I'm going to be talking about at the No Kings rallies today, I went through the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Particulars that was leveled against King George. And one of the very early things that the colonists were complaining about was the fact that the king was interfering with naturalization and people's ability to get into the country. And so there are some striking analogies between the things that the American revolutionaries said about King George and about what's going on today, like stationing troops in people's communities over the objections of the local officials.
What we have here is Donald just absolutely furious. He's whining and sobbing like a little baby because the protest. Remember, he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna crush anybody who protests my vanity parade," and it's sad, and we're gonna mock it, but it's also crazy, right? Because a real president, a good president, would say, "You have the right to protest me. I mean, my goal is to win the support of Americans, but you have the right to protest me." And indeed, a president should say, if you disagree with me, you have the responsibility to voice your concerns so that I can hear it, so that other citizens can hear it, so that the media can hear it, because we live in an open democratic society. And so I welcome your protests, within peaceful means, right? I welcome you protesting me, because you protesting me might be the only way I would ever find out there's a problem, because I got these advisors all around me and they're telling me what I want to hear and what they want me to think. And no president is omniscient. They don't know everything. They can't see everything that happens everywhere. And so a real president would be like, "No, please protest me." Because it can, but not always. Like, look at the protests against Obama, where they called him a secret Kenyan Muslim. Like, obviously, there's nothing constructive to learn there. But like legitimate protest can teach you things. But Donald doesn't want to hear it. He just wants to whine and complain because the American people had the audacity to ruin his stupid little birthday parade.